Welcome back, Year 12s. We're going to be going over a good video today, so get ready for it. So, a quick recap of our last video. We looked at chemical and microbiota barriers in animals and humans. All right. So, stuff like your stomach acid and the chemical substances in there will destroy any pathogens that you swallow. Okay, and a lot of them do go down your throat, and you do swallow them. We looked at plants as well. So we looked at what they have. They have phenols is an important one, secreted by wounded plants, trying to destroy pathogens, and chitinases as well. Again, not as important though as the other stuff. But generally, if a plant's going to get a pathogen infecting it, it's going to be some sort of fungal pathogen. All right, we have microbiological barriers in animals as well. So this is in your gut. So non-pathogenic bacteria. So in other words, good bacteria. They grow in your gut and they prevent the growth of the bad pathogenic bacteria. Okay, so this can be on your skin, this could be in your gut mainly. All right, there's lots and lots in your gut, and they take some nutrients from your food, and in return keep you healthier, and of course in the vagina as well. All right, we're going to look at the second line of defense today. So this is what we call innate immunity as well. So first line of defense is innate, second line of defense is innate, and obviously that third line of defense is going to be adaptive or non-innate. There are dot points. Alrighty, so second line of defense is obviously a component that is innate, as I just mentioned, and they will still try to destroy any pathogens which enter the body. All right, there's no specificity here. There's no, okay, I'm looking for influenza or I'm looking for this specific bacteria. It's if any pathogen gets in, anything that's non-self, as we've learned, that is going to be destroyed. All right, so what does it include, the second line of defense? It includes stuff like cells. All right, so that's generally your white blood cells plus some of the other stuff that they will produce. All right, proteins also produced by the body. So interferons is one example. There's a few other responses like fever, inflammation. All right, but there's a lot of things going on here, and all of these cells we need to know pretty much. Okay, minus maybe basophil cells. All the rest we need to be aware of. Let's continue on. So first one we're going to look at is mast cells. All right, so these are all around your body. Okay, good old mast cells. They're within connective tissue. And essentially they're the reason that if you get hay fever or an allergic response to something, it's the mast cells that are really setting that off. Okay, so they're all around your body. When they detect injury to surrounding cells or are stimulated by some sort of allergen or antigen, they essentially activate, they break down and degranulate, and they release what we call a substance called histamine, which is super important. Okay, and that histamine is what allows other responses to occur. Okay, and that is essentially the inflammation response and the allergen response. So those are the mast cells. Again, release of histamine due to degranulated causes different things. So inflammation, what is that? Vasodilation, right? So that's the expanding of the blood vessels. Okay, so they might have been this size and then they expand out, as you can see there. Okay, to a larger size. If it expands more, what comes? Blood. All right, increased permeability of blood vessels, so it increases the permeability, so more, essentially more holes in the blood vessels so that blood can go through faster. All right. And then chemoattractant to phagocytes. So it just sends out chemicals which attracts white blood cells known as phagocytes. Okay, so you can see the mast cells here doing their work, releasing the what? The histamine, which then expands the blood cell through vasodilation and increases the permeability too. Okay. We still need to be aware of these two things though. We've talked about MHC1 markers. Okay, they identify self and non-self, so we should be aware of those. But there is actually a second one here, MHC2 markers. And they're found on three very special cells that we're going to talk about later, and that is macrophages, dendritic cells, and B lymphocytes. And they are what we call APCs. All right. because they are antigen presenting cells. We'll talk about that later. All right, first and foremost, phagocytes. All right, so you may have heard of this, 7 to 10, even 11. But yeah, phagocytes, anything that's a site, first and foremost, that's a cell. All right, and then this one does phagocytosis. So that's essentially it. So what is phagocytosis? It's a process in which they consume, so they like engulf the pathogen and they break it down inside, okay, using enzymes. So it could be a pathogen, it could be a piece of a pathogen, it could be any foreign material. Phagocytes just clean stuff up. They're like little recycling cells, and by little I mean large recycling cells. Okay. We should have heard of endocytosis. Phagocytosis is just a type of endocytosis. Okay. Any debris it'll recycle as well, as mentioned. All right. The phagocytes you need to be aware of are these three, so macrophages and dendritic cells, which are both APCs as mentioned, and then another one which is the neutrophil. Okay, neutrophil is kind of like a good way to think of it is if this is a chess, if your body's like a chess set of pieces with different cells, the neutrophil is the pawn. All right, it's very numerous. It will die easily, but it does clean up and destroy a lot of things. Okay, because there's so many of them. All right, and it will engulf them with this phagocytosis process. So yeah, again, most common type of phagocyte might also be called granulocyte, although I wouldn't worry about that. It can secrete peptides and then engulf things. Okay, very, very common. I should really put a pawn on this slide. All right, your macrophage is a different cell. All right, it's a type of phagocyte. Really, it means big eater. This word, macrophage. So it does a lot of phagocytosis to different things. And what it also does is, because it's an antigen presenting cell, that APC that I mentioned, it will flag the third line of defense to come along and start helping. All right, and that's where we get that specific powerful response, but we'll get to that later. We also have dendritic cells, again, a phagocyte, so we'll engulf, again, an antigen presenting cell, so it's super important. This is a little bit different in the shape. It has grooves and shoots, kind of looks like kind of like the end of a neuron or a dendrite. With the dendrites on the end. It is much smaller than a macrophage, so it can't eat as much, but it can reach out and sort of grab things as well with its shoots. It is an interesting cell. All right, it's not as circular as the macrophage that we looked at. But again, the important part is it's a phagocyte and it will be an antigen presenting cell, which will flag that third line of defense. All right, good stuff today. See you in the next one.